Tucker Carlson interviewed Republican Senator Josh Hawley, and holy smokes, this interview had so much dishonesty packed into a short clip I'm going to show you here from it. And they're talking about Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and I just want to walk through one part at a time and break down the dishonesty.
And I would just say to Republicans, listen, you can either be the party of Ukraine and the globalists, or you can be the party of East Palestine and the working people of this country. But it's time to say to the Europeans, no more welfare for Europeans. Let the Europeans take the lead on Europe. It is time to put the working people of this country first.
All right, starting with that. Supporting Ukraine doesn't mean we can't also support citizens of East Palestine and other working class individuals. It is the Democratic Party so many times historically and during our present political moment who are very willing to invest in the working class compared to the Republican Party, who often has their major economic success being tax cuts that disproportionately go to the wealthy. So the idea that supporting Ukraine means we can't help the working class is absurd, and his record on supporting the working class is absolutely bad, especially when you compare him to most of the Democratic Party. And the idea that supporting Ukraine is welfare to Europe is a pretty wild way to frame that.
To make those folks strong again and to make this country strong again.
If you keep ignoring people and short-circuiting the democratic process, they get increasingly radical. I mean, everyone's like, Trump's so radical. Trump's pretty moderate, actually. Are you concerned that you could see actual radicalism in American politics just born of frustration? Why wouldn't that happen?
So just openly, I mean, you can say, no, he's saying it might happen, but probably doesn't want it to. Clearly saying to his audience, it would be justified if you got really radical, maybe violent. It would be justified.
Well, you just look at what the mayor of East Palestine, for example, said, Tucker. You listen to the folks on the ground there, and listen, I hear the same thing all over Missouri. My state is not so different from Ohio. It's not different at all. People say that the folks in Washington, D.C. care more about the borders of Ukraine than they care about the borders of our own country. They care more about what's going on over there than the...
Biden has put forward plans on immigration reform and securing the southern border, addressing the problems we're having logistically and the humanitarian problems with our southern border. It's been Republicans who weren't on board with that. They don't actually want solutions. They want to fearmonger about the problems.
The drugs that are flooding into our schools and our communities in Missouri and every other state across this country, they
absolutely should be addressed. How that connects to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, I'm not sure.
They care more about other countries' roads and bridges than they do about our own. So yeah, I'm concerned. I'm concerned about the fact that folks don't feel they're represented, they don't feel they're spoken for, and the truth is, much of the time, they're not. And that's why I would just say to my fellow Republicans, exactly. It's time for us to stand up and speak for the working people of this country and put the...
And then he mentions... you heard at the end there, infrastructure. He didn't vote for the bipartisan infrastructure bill that Biden led on getting passed that invested in American infrastructure. So the talking point that the Democrats care more about infrastructure in other places than here is absurd. And Josh Hawley tried to prevent by voting against those investments in infrastructure just because it was being proposed by a Democrat likely, or he doesn't want those investments anyways. And so... very much incorrect in so many different ways there from Josh Hawley. And then you heard Tucker Carlson do the whole, why wouldn't people get radical? Trump's a moderate, but people could actually get really radical. And interestingly, it was put together this little compilation of, from this one night of his show, during two different interviews, him repeating that type of language that is so dangerous to his audience.
Are you concerned that you could see actual radicalism in American politics just born of frustration? Are you worried, big picture, that Americans will become so frustrated at being ignored by their leaders, really mocked by their leaders, that they'll get radical in a way that's dangerous? I mean, everyone's like, Trump's so radical. Trump's pretty moderate, actually. But I mean, Bolsonaro and Trump, let's be honest, propagandists are moderate guys. Like, they both believed in the system. If you keep ignoring people and short-circuiting the democratic process, they get increasingly radical. But you could get people who truly want to burn it down, and they would have an audience because people are so justifiably infuriated. Why wouldn't that happen?
That's one night. Just how clearly he is provoking his audience to some dangerous actions, saying, why wouldn't something really radical happen? And whenever you say that Trump's a moderate and people could become actually radicalized, he's trying to say that what's gone on previously isn't real radicalism. So it would be even more than that. It would be even more than January 6th, even more than the significantly disproportionate right-wing political violence we see compared to left-wing political violence. That's not real radicalism. It would be even worse than that, according to Tucker Carlson. I mean, people are justified for being enraged. It is stunning. His show is quite the dangerous nightly batch of moments. And then to give you a sense of what else happened during this same evening, here's him saying this about Zelenskyy.
They're selling that man as a hero, and he has, for a full year, done his best to get your sons to Ukraine to die on behalf of his country. He's not a hero. He's an anti-hero. He's a destroyer. Lieutenant Colonel Dan.
He's a destroyer, an anti-hero, and Zelensky's just trying to have the world support his defense of his country. He's not saying that America needs to deploy troops and have, as he said, our sons die in Ukraine, but is absolutely welcoming financial and military aid and lethal aid to be sent his country's way to help defend themselves. And then finally, he continues to push lies about the election. And this is notable because we now know that behind the scenes, at least in between Trump losing the 2020 election and leaving office, Tucker Carlson, while he was perpetuating these lies on air and supporting people who were perpetuating them, behind the scenes was thinking that it was absolutely bonkers, and recognized the election lies to be lies, and he's still saying stuff like this.
Frustrating to watch Biden say this again and again. It is galling to be lectured about democracy by a man who took power in an election so sketchy that many Americans don't believe it was even real. Joe Biden has never had the majority of American support for a single day of the Ukraine war. In fact, Joe Biden is far less popular in the United States than Vladimir Putin is in Russia. That is not an endorsement of Putin, it's just true. And it says everything about Joe Biden's tenuous legitimacy. Democracy? Please. We're adults. Stop lying to us.
So clearly saying that the election wasn't legitimate or alluding to that idea, and saying that's why Biden can't cite democratic values as one of the reasons we're helping in the fight against an authoritarian power trying to take over another country and occupy another country and devastate the civilians and the people's lives. So I will say, because he kind of mentioned this too, I'm so sick of the talking point of a lot of people believe the election was stolen, so maybe we should look into it. Clearly there's something to be suspicious about, because a lot of people are suspicious about the election because of massive media figures and their heroes within politics telling them the election was stolen. We can't create problems and then point to the problem as a reason that we can be spewing dangerous garbage. So here, creating the problem of people believing the election was stolen, and then saying that's why it's okay for him to continue saying we need to be concerned about the legitimacy of Biden's election. It is so wild and so dishonest and absolutely illogical. Last thing on this, the Putin point he made. Yes, Putin may be more popular in his country because he controls the media. Oh my goodness. Biden, he's not as popular as Putin in a country where Putin controls the way that people get their information about him and about the world. So interesting, Tucker. Dangerous stuff there, guys. Let me know what you think of all of this. Luke P. Beasley on Twitter. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show hours before all the clips are uploaded to YouTube, plus get the full bonus show every single Saturday, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Luke Beasley. That's patreon.com/Luke Beasley. Link in the description.